Hi, today I'm going to recommend some books for people who are interested in economics. The first one I actually wrote it in my referenced it in my reference. Okay, so the first one I actually referred to in my personal statement. It's on the field of development economics. It's called Globalization is Discontent by Joseph Stiglitz. It's very popular and I think it's a very interesting book. So the second one is also on development economics. It's called The Bottom Billion by Paul Collier. Why the poorest countries are falling and what can be done about it. But that's more on the third world economies. If you're interested in the field of behavioral economics, the two books that I've heard of, I've heard good things about it. So if you're interested in the field of behavioral economics, the books I am currently reading and I think is really interesting is called Nudge and Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Alright. One of the other book I read, it was actually on the required reading list for my sixth form. It was actually on the required reading list for my sixth form for economics. It's called Prisoners of Geography by Tim Marshall. It's very famous. And it's sort of like an intersection between geography and economics. So if you're interested in economics, geography, policy making, international relations, or just more sort of less maths and more real world events, more real world side of economics, more macro, then this is a book for you. This book I actually haven't read, but I brought it from Waterstones. It's called Free Fall by Joseph Stiglitz. Free Market and the Thinking of the Global Economy. It's very famous. I've been recommended by a good friend of mine to this book, and I've only read this bit, but it's really interesting. It's more on the 08 crisis. This book I read it during sixth form. It's called Quantum Economics: The New Science of Money by David Orwell. I think it's like a fun read. It's not as how do I say this without being offensive? It's not as economics as the other books I recommended, but it's quite interesting. It has a lot of sort of more history, math side of things, and it's a very interesting book. It's a very fun read, and I really enjoyed it. But it's not a conventional economics book, and yeah. This book was actually my graduation present. From sixth form. It's called Grave New World: The End of Globalization, The Return of History by Stephen King. And this one is more on globalization. So still, if you're interested in more the politics, globalization, real world with the macro side of economics, then this is a book for you. Most of the books I recommended today are actually more on the macro side of economics, more policy, geography, policy, international relations, history, that side of stuff, apart from the behavioral ones. Because I think to understand, because of macroeconomics, it's a very interesting field, and I think if you're interested in economics, the best way, what you should read first is probably stuff on macro. I think it's a very complex system. The macroeconomy has like rates, currencies, IR, politics, geography. It's like it intersects a lot of different other field of studies, different other disciplines, and for instance, the macro course I'm studying right now at the LSE, it incorporates history, more the more mathematical formulation, mathematical stuff. We actually do Python. We do it's a very technical and a very complex subject. And I think if you're interested in economics, I think the best way is for me personally, I think to understand, to read more stuff on macro first. I think that would be really interesting. And also, by all means, micro and other subfields are also really interesting. So that's why I recommended some books on behavioral economics, because that sort of teaches you a bit on decision making, and I think that's really interesting and how it can be applied to the real world.